So, when I was in high school, I wasn't a very hardworking student. I wasn't a troublemaker, but I was an incredibly lazy girl, working just the minimum so that my parents wouldn't get angry. I've always had some kind of easiness regarding schoolwork, and never knew what it truly meant to make any efforts. So, I spent all of my classes drawing on my copybooks without many consequences. My junior year math teacher, who was seen by everyone as uptight but very caring, he was pretty upset about this, as were many of my previous teachers. He wanted me to work harder. I wasn't bad at math. I got around a B or a B minus, but sometimes my grades would be very low. During a parent-teacher conference, he told my mom that I was wasting my potential, that it was infuriating how lazy I was. My mom then replied that she agreed with him, and that she wouldn't blame him for pushing me harder to make me work harder. And from this day on, he did exactly what she told. In every math class, he would always question me first before everyone else, was always sitting next to me when we were doing exercises. During the test, he was always telling me, "You can do it." He made me feel incredibly uncomfortable because, at this age, no one wants to be the class's focus. My classmates started to realize that my math teacher was a little obsessed with me, and they were teasing me a lot about this. The last class before Christmas break, the math teacher threw a little surprise Christmas party. It was nice. He gave us chocolates and mock champagne, and we had a lot of fun. During the party, he poured me a glass of mock champagne, telling me that I deserved it, because I was doing a lot better. And it was true, I had moved up to around an A or an A minus. I accepted it, but I didn't drink it entirely. I have diabetes and I already had too much chocolate. But during the next class, I was feeling really bad. I almost fainted and finished my last day of school before Christmas in the nurse's office. At the time, I wouldn't even think that it was because of the alcohol-free champagne. I thought it was due to my diabetes, that I indeed had too much chocolate, even if it didn't look like my usual crisis. A few weeks later, my class threw some kind of charity event. It was a class project and we were very proud of it. In my country, we don't have prom, so it was our occasion to wear pretty formal clothing and to dance together. The math teacher was invited, and he was helping some of the boys to attend to the bar. He served me an alcohol-free cocktail, but before I could even drink it, a classmate of mine, Flora, poured some vodka in it, even though it was forbidden to bring alcohol to the event. I was mad because, with my diabetes, I couldn't drink alcohol, so I told her that she just ruined the cocktail. At the time, I thought she did, but now when I think about it, I wonder if she didn't choose to drink it instead. The event ended pretty badly because of the alcohol Flora had brought. Some guys were very drunk and they started breaking things and so on, and Flora passed out because of all the alcohol that she had. This ended the event. Flora had been admitted to the hospital because her coma was pretty severe, and we spent the next day being lectured by all the teachers of the school. Flora got expelled from the school and never went again. I was very upset with her, and because of her, every event would now have been forbidden and our project was a failure. We gave a very bad image to the association that we were raising funds for, so I kind of ghosted her and never asked her if she was doing better, etc. And now I feel bad about this, but at the time, I was immature. But because of that, I will never know if she was ill because of the alcohol or because of my cocktail. A few weeks later, I failed a math test. It had been a long time since I had done that, and my math teacher was very angry. He yelled at me in front of everyone, saying how much of a disappointment I was, that I was hopeless, that I would just end up living in a cardboard box under a bridge. Something was off. I was feeling it. He had a very weird look in his eyes. It chilled me and I couldn't help it. I started crying. He calmed down a bit and said that he would just give me an hour of detention, during which I will copy my lesson. I was a little surprised normally because detention is for bad behavior, not for bad grades. But I was a little relieved because it was a small punishment. My parents would never know. Indeed, I lived kind of far from my high school, and there was only one bus every night between my high school and my home at 5 p.m. And because of that, even when I finished at 4 p.m., I would never get home before 5 p.m. And when I've had detention between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m., my parents would never know. But then when he officially gave me the detention hour, he said that he wanted to be personally present, and it was only possible between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. I was really nervous, because I would have to tell my parents to come get me at 6 p.m., and they would know everything. As I said earlier, I wasn't a troublemaker, so at first I planned to go to the detention hour, but during the day, my friends and I talked a lot about it, and I was feeling more rebellious because of the sensation of being supported by my friends. So I decided to not tell my parents that I was in detention, and that one of my friends would pick me up at 6 p.m. and drive me home. At 5 p.m., when heading towards the detention room, I was angry, mumbling that it wasn't fair to be in detention because of one and only bad grade. When I arrived in front of the detention room, I realized I was the only one waiting. I then realized that I would be the only student in detention, alone with a math teacher who was a little obsessive, and it was getting dark outside. It was during late winter, early spring, so the night was early. This was a big nope for me, and when I saw him coming, I panicked. I said something like, "Sorry, I have an emergency. I have to go now. I'll email the school for rescheduling my detention hour." And then I ran off. He started to yell at me that I had to obey him and go to detention, and that he would call my parents, and at this moment I didn't care. I sprinted towards the bus stop and caught my bus at the last second, and I went home. I was afraid that he would have called my parents, so when I arrived, I was shaking, but my parents greeted me normally, so I assumed that eventually he didn't call them. He never came back the next day, nor the next weeks. Eventually, I learned that he had quit his position. The school therapist came during an hour to ask us if we wanted to talk about the math teacher, but as nobody knew what was going on with him, we didn't have much to say, and the therapist left, and we never heard of him again. Until a few months ago, I became a teacher. Ironic, given my laziness when I was a teen. And one day, chatting with my coworker, I mentioned his name, talking about my weird, bizarre math teacher, and how I had skipped a detention hour. And one of my oldest coworkers went very pale hearing his name. In fact, a few days after the detention hour incident, my math teacher was arrested for having bad stuff from the dark web. Maybe my detention hour was really just a normal detention hour, and it would have went without a problem. But now, I will never know and will always wonder what would have happened if I would have stayed there and didn't catch the bus. And sorry, Flora, maybe you were expelled because of me. I just want to say this all happened when I was 18, and I was young, innocent, and naive. Now that I'm in my mid-20s, I would never let this happen again. It was my freshman year of college, and as could one imagine, I was excited to be on my own for once in my life. So excited to be on my own that I decided I was going to take summer classes on campus. That way, I wouldn't have to worry about coming in when the big crowd of freshmen came, and I would already know where everything was. Plus, it meant that I could get away from my parents faster. But mainly, all they could think about was boys. You see, I had never dated anyone through high school, so I thought I would find my true love at college. Because of course, that's what all the movies told me anyways. About 2 weeks go by and me and one of my roommates, I had 4, were hanging out in the lounge area showing out pictures from Instagram of our friends, family, etc. Well, my roommate, I'll call her Tracy, showed me a picture of her and these 2 guys. One of the guys was her boyfriend, and the other was Tracy's boyfriend's best friend. I'll call him Sean. Now, Sean was very attractive, and I told Tracy that he was hot. And she told me that he went to the tech college near us and he was single. Now, a day or two goes by after this, and she tells me that she told Sean that I was interested in him, and he wanted to know if he could follow me on Instagram so we could DM. At the time, I trusted Tracy because she seemed like a cool and chill girl, so I excitedly told her yes. I wish I never told her yes. I talked to Sean for about a week before I was comfortable enough to give him my phone number. At first, he seemed super sweet. He would always send me a text message in the mornings, telling me to have a good day at class and that he couldn't wait to FaceTime me that night. And we would FaceTime every night. At first, I loved it because I never had a boy give me so much attention. And like I said before, I had never dated anyone, so I was over the moon that he was even interested enough in me to talk to me. But it started to get annoying. He would text me almost every second of the day and try to FaceTime me at least 4 times. When I wouldn't respond to him, he would ask if I was okay. Why wasn't I answering him? If I was seeing another guy. If I was seeing another guy, it would make him really mad if I was. I, of course, once seeing the messages, would try to reassure him that I was okay and that I wasn't seeing anyone. Like I said in the beginning, I was young and naive, so I didn't see it as a red flag. And things kept going downhill from there. It came to a point where he started asking for pictures of me, either just selfies or pictures of me in the mirror. I wouldn't send them though because I wasn't comfortable, and he would brush it off saying that was fine and I could send him pictures of myself to him whenever I was ready. One day, I was in class for a long time because it was a lab, and it started at 7 p.m. and wouldn't end until 10 p.m. that night. For those of you who don't know, labs in college can last from 2 to 4 hours, and mine just happened to be 3 hours that night. Once class had ended, I headed up to my dorm and took out my phone. I clicked the button on the side, lighting up the screen. It had 380 unread text messages, 10 missed calls, and 3 voicemails from Sean. Before I could even react or even read all the messages, my phone started to ring. Instead of being Sean, it was my dad. He called me to make sure that I was alright, because he had gotten an alert from the phone company that I had gotten all of those messages. I was still on his phone plan at the time. I don't know why, but I lied to him and laughed it off, saying that I was just in a group chat with a bunch of girls from school. Once I got off the phone with my dad, I quickly went to look at the messages that I had gotten. Most of them were demanding why I wasn't answering him, and he would come and find me if I didn't answer him. The voicemails were crude and mostly of him saying how he was going to find me, and when he did, he was going to punish me for not answering him. After this, I just completely blocked him on everything I could think of, completely freaked out about the whole thing. About a week goes by and I start to slowly forget about the incident, trying not to think too much about it. At least that's what I was trying to do. That whole week, I felt like someone was watching me, but I brushed it off as me being paranoid. At the end of the week, my roommate Tracy, who I had been avoiding, comes up to me shouting at me saying how I broke Sean's heart, and he had called her crying saying that he didn't understand why I stopped talking to him. I couldn't even get a word out because of how fast she was talking. She finally called me really self-centered and walked away. I went to class right after that, not realizing I forgot to lock my dorm room. You see, I lived with 4 girls and each girl had their own room, which would lock from the outside with a key. Well, when I came back from class, I noticed my door was cracked open slightly. My heart dropped into my stomach. I hesitated going in. My hands were shaking terribly, but I finally got the nerve to push it open. Nothing. There was nothing out of place, it seemed. Even though there was nothing out of place, I could have sworn I closed the door before leaving for class. Though I don't remember if I had locked it or not, I know for sure I had closed the door. So I asked my roommates, including Tracy, if anyone had gone into my room today, and they all denied it, even Tracy. But I just knew, in my heart, someone had been in there. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't. So one weekend when I knew that all my roommates were going to be out of town, I had switched dorm buildings and roomed with a girl I had gotten to be close friends with. After I moved in with her, I told her about all that had happened, and she said that she would walk with me to all my classes. Thankfully, we had most of our classes together anyway, except the night lab that I had. But she would still walk with me to my lab, and wait until my lab was done to walk with me back to the dorm. One night though, she had gone out of town to see her parents or something. I was walking back from my lab and it had gone really late that night again. I heard someone walking behind me, but I didn't pay any mind to it since class was just let out. But as I was walking, I could hear these steps getting closer. So I started to pick up my walking speed. At this point, I could tell someone was following me and I was too afraid to look back. As the footsteps increased and got faster, I started running as fast as I could. Now let me tell you, I'm not athletic by any means. Somehow though, adrenaline probably. I was able to sprint to my dorm building hearing someone still running behind me. And I thankfully already had my keycard out to get into the building, and I swiped it on the door and I slammed it behind me. Looking up from slamming the door, I see someone who's probably about 10 feet away from it staring at me. Even though the person's hoodie was up, I couldn't see their face. I could just tell that they were looking at me, but I knew it was Sean. Not wasting any more time, I go to the RA that was up that night, bawling, telling him what had just happened. He called the police and I told them everything that happened, but they basically said they couldn't do anything since I didn't even see his face, even if I thought it was Sean. And maybe I was just paranoid since it was nighttime and I was walking by myself. After all this, I called my friend and told her what had happened, and she never went out of town again if I had my late night classes. I eventually decided that college wasn't for me and I dropped out. I moved back to my home state and went to cosmetology school and became a hairdresser. I still haven't dated anyone yet though. Maybe it's the fear of something like that happening again. I'll never know. I do know that I'm super careful with who I talk to now, until I give my social media and phone number to. I'm still scared to go to places by myself, even though it's been years and I'm states away. Even so, I don't know. For context, I'm a 24-year-old female and I live in a very populated city where people drive a lot. I'm still shooken up by this and I'm honestly curious to hear your thoughts. The other night, I had parked my car outside and went to let my dog into the house, and I went back out to get my stuff. Note, it was about 6 p.m. and completely dark out because of the winter. I get into my driver's seat, lock the car, and I'm sitting there for about a minute getting my stuff together. All of a sudden, I see a man walk in front of my car to the driver's side window. He's holding something up to my window, and I automatically get extremely panicked. A few months ago, a man held a wrench up to my window in a grocery store parking lot, where I was sitting with my roommate and I, but he saw my dog and he walked away fast. It was a sketchy situation then, and a sketchy situation now. Now the next few steps are blurry. I am looking at him in a panic. He is motioning for me to roll my windows down. I look into the back of my car to see my dog there to protect me, and I realize that she isn't there, as I just let her into the house. I do realize that I had the back windows both about 75% open, a rookie mistake. And then a thought pops into my mind. I can drive away. My car is still on. I shift the car into drive. He reaches back onto either the window or the door, or the side of the car, I don't know. I start to drive and he backs up. I pull out into the street and almost hit another car, and I end up pulling out and leaving, shaking. The next day, I realized my landlord had a camera pointed at the front of the house, to see if there were any packages getting stolen. I asked if he had clips from that time the night before, and he did. Too bad that it's motion censored, so it only shows the moment when my car is pulling out. He walks away from the car and he has a huge wooden plank or something in his hands hidden behind his back. At least a 3-foot plank or something. He then walked down one of these streets a little bit and then turned around and went another way. I wish I didn't even see that video because I was scared before and I thought maybe that I was overreacting. But now I know that he was holding something there that could have potentially been a weapon. I'm very thankful that I trusted my instincts. Someone on a neighborhood website that night said that their car had gotten stolen 2 streets over, so maybe he had wanted my car.